Yep, Pete. Good afternoon. Thanks for being here. I thought I'd take a few minutes to go over the highlights from the National Governors Association meeting I attended last week in Washington before taking your questions. First, the NGA always offers an opportunity for governors of both parties to come together and discuss shared priorities. Members of Congress might want to take a look at how governors are able to put that partisanship aside and focus on areas we agree, because I believe there's more common ground than some would think. We had a good meeting at the White House with the President, Vice President, members of the Cabinet, where we discuss infrastructure, the implementation of IIJA, and the IRA. We also got to know the President's team a bit better. We also talked about some of the layers of federal permitting that can create problems in working on these projects. The permitting process is much more onerous here than in other Western countries, which often makes projects more expensive and slower to get done. Governors of both parties emphasized to the President the need to streamline some of these processes so states can take full advantage of these resources faster and more cost effectively. Later, I attended a meeting of President Biden's Council of Governors, which I was appointed to last year. We met with senior officials from the Department of Defense to talk about National Guard issues, cybersecurity, and more. I also raised the need for us to focus on shoring up domestic supply chains. During the pandemic, it became very, very clear to me that we as a country are far too dependent on foreign nations for supplies. And it's important for national security that we make sure we're capable of producing critical supplies right here at home. I also sat down with New England governors where we focused on power sources in the Northeast and the price of energy and how we can continue to work together. Now, this may be a bit of a blast from the past for some of you, but we had a lengthy discussion about TDI, the fully permitted 1,000 megawatt transmission line that would come through Vermont and then connect southern New England to clean energy from Quebec. As you might remember, we heavily promoted this in my first term and would have used the revenue for Lake Champlain cleanup, but unfortunately, Massachusetts decided to go in a different direction, so the line was never built. But now, with significant problems with other routes considered in New Hampshire and Maine, the New England governors are very interested in the opportunity TDI provides to us. And it now has legs again, which would be good news for Vermont and the entire region. Lastly, I was appointed by the NGA chair, Governor Murphy of New Jersey, to co-chair a task force with Governor Lamont on public health and disaster response. We co-hosted a panel with federal regulators and cybersecurity experts about protecting our grid from foreign threats, as well as making sure the grid is prepared to handle a carbon-free world as we further our reliance on electricity. Last week, a report was issued on the number of attacks on our electric grid here in the U.S., and we learned we had 169 incidents in 2022 alone, which was the most in a decade. In 2021, it was 96, and 88 in 2020. So as you can see, the numbers are growing. And as eye-opening as this data might be, it doesn't include the climate-related weather events we've had, which are also increasing in severity and frequency. Because of the devastation these incidents can have on life, property, and our economies, it's imperative we're prepared to respond to any large-scale disruptions. And as we continue to electrify, it's so important we get this right, because dependence on electricity will only grow. So I look forward to working with Governor Lamont and others on how we can work together as a region to prepare for the future of energy. So with that, I'll open up the questions.
Can you talk about what immediate next steps look like as it relates to TDI? And sort of talk about why you think this would be so beneficial for Vermont if it were to happen?
We had the other governors had forwarded a letter to the federal government in terms of a grant for this specifically. to help defer some of the costs as they move forward. So it really is about seeing if we're going to receive that grant. But then I think it's important for the New England governors to go back to their folks and see if we can get to the table with TDI and their counterparts in southern New England again.
Governor, have you gotten a chance yet to review Senate Bill 4? It's a pretty wide-spanning gun piece of legislation that I believe is going to be hitting the Senate floor early next week, probably.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that it got out of committee at this point.
Committee yet.
Oh, okay. I haven't reviewed it at this point.
Part of this week, lawmakers will be looking at suicide prevention as one of the policy arenas, and part of that comes with the conversation around waiting periods. I know we looked into this a few years ago. You didn't support it at the time. How is that issue weighing on you now?
It's still, I feel as though we should be looking at the root causes of suicide. I'm not sure that the gun waiting period, from my perspective, is the right approach. But I know we're all focused on this. I also know the Governor Murphy, the NGA chair this year, has made children in suicide and mental health issues in particular one of his initiatives. So we talked quite a bit about that at one of the events I was at. And so we're going to be working on that throughout the year. I know the legislature has some thoughts. We have a lot of initiatives in our proposal, our budget proposal, to take some steps forward in that area as well. So I also think it should be highlighted, the 988 provision that was put in place a few months ago. I think we're seeing positive effects from that, and I think that we can again take other steps towards getting to a point where we're seeing a downward trajectory.
In other gun news, I don't know, I think it might be Senate Bill 3. I think that's the paramilitary Slate Ridge, banning paramilitary camps. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, again, I haven't looked at it specifically, but we've had our challenges, obviously, as a state with that one particular facility, and finally through some of the environmental provisions, zoning regs, and so forth. It looks like we've got that hopefully closed, but I'll take a look at that. I'm not closed-minded to that. I just don't know the particulars and what far-reaching effects it would have on. I don't know if there are any other facilities in Vermont, to be honest with you, and whether whether it would encompass any other training type facilities or not. If it's specific to a certain segment, I just don't know.
What information can you give us about this one incident since you briefed us last week?
Yeah, we're still gathering information on that. It appears that it was driven outside of our borders, national borders, but we're trying to get all the information we can at this point. We're still planning to have a debrief on that to see what we can do to better protect ourselves. We also reached out to our congressional delegation. This might be, and I talked to other governors about this as well, but this might be something that that we might have to contemplate on a national scale, because I don't know where it can lead us. If it's outside our borders, we don't have the ability to prevent that in some respects. So we might need some help on the federal level to do that. But I might ask Commissioner Morrison if she has any further information on that.
Good afternoon, Governor. I don't have additional information. As you mentioned, we are continuing to work with our federal partners to coordinate all the available information from the 21 communities in Vermont And generally speaking, we're looking to work with them to have one central repository for that information. And as you mentioned, there is every indication that this is an international origin, so it would likely be investigated primarily at the federal level, but we just haven't gotten to that place yet to make that final determination. So more to come, and as the governor mentioned, we are meeting internally to debrief more community level things, how our response went and how we can be better prepared in the future, and other aspects of the incident, such as how can we continue to build resilience and hopefully minimize the amount of trauma that incidents like this cause within our schools and our communities, because that was scary stuff. So we'll continue to learn all the lessons we can from this and apply them going forward across state government, not just from the police perspective.
How are you able to determine, Commissioner, that the calls originated out of the country?
I don't happen to have that information at my fingertips, but that is the briefing that I have received at the governor as well. So I don't happen to know the how we know that, but if that's of importance, I can try and get you a statement on that.
Is that information from state investigators or federal investigators?
My understanding is that it's the opinion of both.
And do you have any specificity on where outside the country this originated? Not
to a degree that I'd be comfortable saying. I think that there are some theories and speculation, but nothing that I go on record saying. And do you know if it's, is there a sense of whether this is part of a organized syndicate of some kind, or a rogue actor, or? That I don't know.
We're hardly the only state that's been dealing with this.
That's right.
And until we can better prevent this, and I don't know if that's even possible at this point. I mean, is this something that the state should be budgeting for, maybe in school budgets or law enforcement, of responding to these?
Well, again, I think we've proven, I think the steps were taken last Wednesday. I think we did pretty well in our response, but there's always ways to be better, and that's something that will come out during the debrief, and we'll put those into practice if needed. We'll take whatever steps we need to make sure our kids are safe. So if it's more resources, we'll take a look at that. If it's just the practice, we'll change our approach, but anything we can do to perfect that. Commissioner, anything you want to add to that?
No, sir. You nailed it.
Tim McQuiston, Vermont Business Magazine. I see you're on.
Oh, thanks, Jason. I didn't have any questions for the governor today, believe it or not, Governor, so you're a little bit off the hook. But congratulations on the Governors Association meeting.
Yeah, it was a good meeting.
Ed Barber, do you happen to be on? That was it for remote RSVP, so any other in the room?
The House passed a bill seeking to prevent perpetrators of domestic violence from filing abusive litigation against their ex-partners. Have you reviewed this bill? It's over in the Senate now, but it's passed the House.
I'm sure our general counsel has been taking a look at this, and as well as public safety, but I'm not aware of this one.
Okay.
But we'll take a look. Well, thank you all very much. Appreciate it.